My girlfriend looked at me and said, "I need space, not a little, like actual space." I didn't say anything back. I replied, "Okay." Then I put the phone down and went back to my work. 3 days later, she started texting, calling, leaving voice notes, asking why I hadn't reached out, why I seemed fine, why I wasn't fighting for her, how one message gave me everything I didn't know I needed. I was 29 years old, senior systems architect at a mid-sized tech firm. Stable income, quiet apartment, structured life. I had been with her for 2 years and 8 months. Her name was Mara. She was 27, worked in marketing, and had a talent for making ordinary situations feel like emergencies. The relationship was not bad. That's the honest answer. It wasn't cruel or violent or cold. It was just uneven. I gave more than I received and told myself that was love. I handled the logistics, the reservations, the utilities on the apartment we shared, the car insurance we split, except I paid first and she paid me back sometimes. In pieces, months later, when she remembered. I set up her laptop when it crashed. I fixed her work presentations at midnight. I listened when she was overwhelmed and said nothing when I was. I told myself she was just going through a season, that she'd stabilize, that if I was steady enough, she would match it eventually. I was wrong. It was a Tuesday, not a dramatic one. I remember it was raining and I had just closed a project that had taken 11 weeks. I was tired in a way that had settled into my bones. She was home. I came in, set my bag down, and she was sitting on the couch, not upset, not angry, just certain. The way people look when they've rehearsed something. She said, "I've been thinking for a while. I need space, not a little, like actual space. I think we should separate." I looked at her. I didn't feel the floor shift. I didn't feel heat rise in my chest. I had a single, clean thought, and it was this: she thinks I'll beg. I didn't. I said, "Okay." She waited. The silence stretched. She said, "That's all you have to say?" I said, "What else would I say?" She didn't answer that. She said she meant it. I told her I believed her. She said she needed time to figure things out. I told her to take what she needed. She waited again, for collapse, for negotiation, for the version of me she had built a strategy around. That version didn't show up. I went to the bedroom. I started making a list. The list was not emotional. It was practical. When you share a life with someone for almost 3 years, you share infrastructure. I had designed most of ours without realizing I had done it. That night, I looked at every wire in the system and started disconnecting them. Calmly and in order. The apartment was mine. My name alone on the lease. I had insisted on that 14 months earlier, during a renewal, and she had been mildly annoyed and then forgot about it. I made a note to speak with my landlord in the morning. The joint streaming accounts, mine. The grocery delivery subscription, mine. The shared calendar app we used. I removed her access that night. Not dramatically. Just removed it the way you remove a permission you no longer need extended. The car insurance was in my name. She drove her own car. I had added her to my policy as a favor 18 months ago because her rate was higher and mine could absorb it. That was $47 a month I had paid, and she had paid me back for maybe 6 of those months. I logged in and removed her from the policy. No call, no confrontation, just updated. The Spotify family plan I ran for her, her sister, and her cousin, I removed all 3 accounts. I moved back to individual. It was $10 less per month. The money wasn't the point. The architecture was the point. I had built a support structure around a relationship that no longer existed. I was simply removing the scaffolding. The most significant thing, I had been co-signer on a credit card she opened 2 years prior, when her credit wasn't strong enough to qualify a loan. I called the bank the following morning, asked about the process for removing a co-signer. It was not instant. It required paperwork and her cooperation, but I initiated it. I documented the call. I sent a follow-up email to the bank representative to create a written record. She didn't know I had done any of this. She thought space meant pause. She thought pause meant I would be standing in the same place when she came back. She came back on Friday. For days after the Tuesday conversation, she had stayed at her friend Jess's place. I knew because she had posted a photo Wednesday evening, sitting on Jess's balcony with a glass of wine, the caption a single ellipsis that was clearly designed to be seen. I saw it. I double-tapped nothing. She came back to collect some things, she said. A few clothes, her skincare, some books. I was in the kitchen when she walked in. I offered her coffee. She looked at me like I was a stranger. I poured myself a cup and waited. She said, You're not even going to ask me how I'm doing? I said, how are you doing? She said, don't do that. I said, I'm not doing anything. She started moving through the apartment, gathering her things. I noticed her open the kitchen drawer where she kept her extra keys and pull them out. She paused. She put them on the counter and then picked them up again and pocketed them. She wanted the door to remain open. I watched that happen and said nothing. Before she left, she said, you seem really fine with all of this. I said, I'm adjusting. She said, adjusting. The way she repeated it, I could hear the shape she thought she had me in. She thought adjusting meant grieving, quietly waiting, holding the door from the inside. She left. I texted my landlord. The following week, I received a message from Jess. Not a call, a message. Jess had always been civil with me, the kind of cordial that exists in the orbit of someone else's relationship. The message said that Mara was really struggling and that I should think about reaching out. I read it. I set the phone down. I did not respond to Jess. Then I got a call from Mara's older sister, Dana. Dana I had a genuine warmth with. We had cooked together at family events. We had talked about real things. Dana called and said, hey, I just want to check in. Both of you are in my thoughts. I appreciated Dana. I told her honestly that I was doing well, that I wished Mara well, and that I was giving her the space she asked for. Dana said, she didn't think you'd actually do that. I said, I know. Dana didn't say anything for a moment. Then she said, okay, I understand. And I believe she did. The social pressure was not violent. It was just present. The assumption underneath all of it, from Jess, from Dana, from the ellipsis on Instagram, was that I was waiting. That the space she asked for was a test of my pursuit. That I was supposed to pursue. I did not pursue. What I did instead was this. I moved her remaining items to a labeled box in the hallway. Not thrown. Not scattered. Labeled, organized, with a message sent over text that said, your remaining things are boxed by the front door. Let me know a time to collect them that works for you, or I can arrange a drop-off. Formal. Documented. A courtesy offered, not a plea extended. She read the message and didn't respond for 2 days. When she finally responded, the message was longer than anything she had sent me in months. She said she felt like I was erasing her. She said she had asked for space, not a termination. She said the word termination. I noticed that. She said she needed me to understand that space didn't mean over. I read the message twice. I replied, I understood your words as clearly as you intended them. If that was a miscommunication, I'm open to a direct conversation at a time you choose. Let me know. She called within the hour. The conversation was 40 minutes long, and I will not reconstruct all of it. What matters is the architecture of it, where the power was, how it moved. She had expected to find me in a diminished state. Quieter, maybe. More available. Ready to renegotiate on worse terms. That is the logic of the demand for space. It assumes the person granting the space will use that space to feel its absence, to grow smaller in it, to come back asking. I had used the space differently. I had slept well. I had cleared 11 items from my professional backlog. I had called my parents twice. I had gone for a run 4 mornings in a row, something I had stopped doing because our mornings had always been consumed by her schedule. I had made dinner for myself at 7 o'clock, eaten it slowly, and read for an hour before bed. I had not been sad. I had been, and I recognized this clearly, more myself. She heard this in my voice. She didn't say that she heard it. But the conversation shifted about 15 minutes in, from offense to something more careful. She asked if I had missed her. I said, I've missed certain things. She asked which things. I said, I've thought about that. I think what I missed was a version of this relationship that existed more in my expectations than in practice. I don't think that's your fault. I think it's just what it was. Silence. She said, that's a really cold thing to say. I said it carefully, not coldly. There's a difference. The cosigner situation came to a head 3 weeks later. She had received a letter from the bank. They required her to either qualify independently for the card or transfer the balance and close the account. She was not expecting this. She called, and this time there was no softness in her voice at all. She said, you did this on purpose. I said, I initiated a process to remove my financial liability from an account tied to a relationship that you ended. Yes, that was intentional. She said, you're punishing me. I said, I'm protecting myself. There is a difference. She said she would tell people what I had done. I told her she was welcome to describe the situation accurately. I told her I had documentation of every step I had taken, every call made, every message sent. I told her that removing a cosigner from a credit account after a breakup was not only legal, but standard financial practice. And I told her this without anger, as a fact. She went quiet. I said, "I'll help you find a path forward on the card if you want assistance. I'm not trying to harm you. I'm just no longer responsible for your financial standing." She didn't take the help, but she stopped calling it punishment. 2 months passed. Real months, not dramatic ones, not filled with confrontations and scenes. Just time, moving at its actual pace. I signed a new lease on the apartment. My name, just my name. I repainted the bedroom a color I had always wanted. I took the Sunday afternoons she used to consume with errands and indecision, and I gave them back to myself. I used them to cook, to go to the farmer's market, to sit without agenda. I saw her once, at a mutual friend's birthday gathering. She came in with Jess. I was already there, already in the middle of a conversation with people I liked. She looked at me from across the room. I lifted my glass slightly, not a wave, just an acknowledgement. She looked away. Later in the evening, when the group had thinned, she came to where I was standing. She said, "You look good." I said, "Thank you." She said, "I didn't think you'd be okay." I said, "I know." She looked at me for a moment longer than the conversation required. Then she said, "I think I made a mistake." I said, "Maybe, but I think you made the decision that felt true to you at the time, and I gave you exactly what you asked for." She said, "That's not what I wanted." I said, "I know that now, but I didn't know it then, and I'm not sure I would have done anything differently if I had." We stood there for a moment in the noise of someone else's party, and then I said it was good to see her, and I meant it genuinely, and I walked back toward the people I was enjoying. She watched me go. I didn't look back to confirm it, but I knew. Some things you know. What I missed was not Mara. I want to say that with precision because it matters. What I missed was the version of love I had constructed around the relationship, the idea that if I was steady enough, patient enough, capable enough, it would eventually become what I needed it to be. That is not a person you miss. That is a belief system. And belief systems, when they fail, leave a specific kind of quiet. Not grief, not relief, something more honest than both. I had built my half of the relationship on the assumption that my value would eventually be seen if I made myself indispensable enough. I paid the bills first. I fixed the things. I solved the problems. I made myself the infrastructure and then wondered why I felt invisible. That is not love. That is a negotiation where only one person knows they're negotiating. When she said she needed space, she was not wrong. She was just wrong about who needed it more. The credit card was resolved within 90 days. She qualified independently. Her credit had improved, partly because the card was well managed, which was partly because I had co-signed it and she had never defaulted on it. So in a way, my infrastructure had built the foundation she used to remove me from it. I found that satisfying in a clean, ironic way. Not because it hurt her, but because it was precisely the pattern. I build things, she uses them. The building is invisible. I stopped building invisible things. At work, I received a promotion I had been waiting on for 14 months. The project I closed on the Tuesday she asked for space was the project that triggered it. I accepted the promotion quietly. I told my parents. I went to dinner alone to Market, a good restaurant, a seat at the bar, a meal I chose entirely by what I wanted, without negotiating, without compromising, without checking if someone else was in the mood for something else. It was one of the best meals I've had. There are things I will carry from this. Not wounds, not lessons dressed up as wisdom, just facts. The fact that for 2 years and 8 months, I gave someone the quiet labor of infrastructure and called it love. The fact that I was capable, the entire time, of a life that felt like mine, and I had been postponing it, one concession at a time, waiting for permission I had the authority to grant myself. The fact that she was not a villain. She was someone who misjudged what she had. She thought what she had was a man who would chase. She had a man who would simply stop. She didn't know the difference until she asked for space and received it exactly, completely, without modification. The fact that the space clarified everything. Here is what I know now that I didn't know at 29 years old, standing in a kitchen, holding a cup of coffee, while someone waited for me to beg. The person who gives without tracking and fixes without asking and stays without conditions is not being loved. They are being managed. And the moment you stop being manageable, The entire architecture of the relationship reveals itself, because the part that was love stays, and the part that was leverage disappears, and you can finally see exactly what you were standing on. Calm is not weakness. Silence is not acceptance. Walking away without argument is not losing. It is, in fact, the most complete sentence you can offer a person who has run out of things to say. She asked for space because she expected the absence of space to follow. That is not cruelty. That is just a miscalculation. People make them. The cost of that miscalculation is not always recoverable. And the most honest, most uncomfortable question I can leave you with, the one I ask myself still: if she had not asked for space, would I have ever taken it? And if the answer to that is no, then who exactly was keeping whom?